All right, so good evening, everyone. My name is Vanessa Vassall, and I am here representing Black Millennials for Flint. I just want to thank everyone for coming in to tune in to
All right, so good evening, everyone. My name is Vanessa Vassall, and I'm here representing Black Maternal.
I have YouTube going at the same time, and I could hear it in the background. Okay, I'm gonna start over. You guys forgive me. Good evening. I'm Vanessa Vassall, representing Black Millennials for Flint, and we are here this evening for our next installment of the Black Maternal Health Crisis. This time, we're going to be talking to the men in our dads, docs, and doulas, Black and Latino men in maternal health session 1. I want to thank everyone who's tuned in on Facebook, everyone who's tuned in on YouTube, and we're just going to go ahead and get right into it. So before we have the conversation, I would just like each of our panelists to just speak about yourself, introduce yourself, and talk about what brought you to this work, what you do, and anything else that you want to share with those who are tuned in. Whoever wants to start can get started.
I guess I can start it off. So, good evening, everybody. I appreciate you, Ms. Vassall, for having us on, and again, appreciate you, brothers, for being on with me. My name is William Moore. I'm a health educator, doula, and lactation educator for St. Paul Ramsey County Public Health in St. Paul, Minnesota. Also a consultant and the COO of Black Yoga Magazine. I've been in public health work for a little over 3 years now. No, 4. And I've been working in child and maternal health, infant and maternal health work for 2.5 to 3 years of that time in public health. I kind of got into the work, was introduced to the work while I was facilitating a men's group for Ramsey County, something that I did once a month. It's called Club Dad. From there, I went into contributing and being a regular attendee of a quarterly group that the county had called BEC, Birth Equity Community Council. And that is a group or a meeting that we have quarterly where individuals from all walks of life, different, public health nurses, doctors, people from all different professions, community members got together and talked about what disparities in infant mortality rate and the maternal death rate look like in our community from their lens. And the idea is to really crowdsource information and strategies from people from all walks of life to give us a better idea about how we can address those disparities, which are astronomical. When we look at numbers like 243% of Black women more likely to die as a result of birth-related causes in this country as compared to white women, that's not an accident. That's an issue of systematic and institutional racism in our healthcare system. In our county alone, when you have a disparity that says before the age of 1 year old, you're going to have 2 Black or brown babies die before the age of 1 as compared to their white counterparts. Again, we're talking about situations of systematic and institutional racism that need to be addressed. And so, not to take up all the airtime, but as we were kind of thinking about different strategies in different ways, a mentor of mine in this work and a public health nurse at Ramsey County Public Health by the name of Tamiko Ralston came up with the idea to get train men to become doulas and lactation educators so that men could feel more equipped about the birth process, and we could work with other men so that they could stop abdicating their power within their own families and their communities when it came to birth space. And be a more active participant so that we can start supporting our mothers more. And also be another voice and advocate in the delivery room when it came to our families and our mothers really interacting with these direct service providers to make sure that they're not being overlooked, not being ignored when they're talking about issues that they're experiencing during the birth process, or issues that they're encountering with their infants, that they could be heard and those things could be addressed. With that, I'll kind of leave it open to the other fellows here who are aboard.
Mr. Root, you're still on mute. Thank you.
Brother Wesley, we're just introducing ourselves. Okay. I defer to you. first.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. Glad to be here. My name is Wesley Bugg. I am the Chief Operating Officer of Reaching Our Sisters Everywhere and the Director of Reaching Our Brothers Everywhere, which is the program of Rose. Our mission is to educate, equip, and empower men and other supporters so that they have an impact that increases breastfeeding rates and decreases infant mortality rates. The company came about through my mother, who started Rose 2011. I started Rose 2014 with a wisdom council who Brother Root is a part of. And through that initiative, we are a national organization, both Rose and Robe, helping mom, babies, and supporters of breastfeeding and the reduction of infant mortality. Robe's specializes in working and networking, collaborating with groups that are already in existence to support and reinforce the work that they're doing. So glad and excited to be here with the other panelists and the host, and look forward to hearing and learning from you all.
And I am Carl Root. I work with and for Mr. Bugg. I am a community transformer and a fatherhood practitioner, responsible boyhood, manhood, and fatherhood. Been doing the work over 3 decades, 30 years. I'm pretty old in this business. It's personal for me because I was a boy. I am a man and a father. So, you know, it goes on for me. But I met Mr. Bugg around 2014 when he first, I guess, started thinking about Robe, creating the program Robe. And he asked me at a fatherhood summit that I was a part of, he asked me if I would be willing to work with his organization. And I came to a conference, sat in, and had never been in this space before because, again, I came from the toxic masculinity track of responsible manhood. And when he mentioned that Reaching Our Sisters Everywhere was his mother's organization, and she was creating Robe, Reaching Our Brothers Everywhere, to be that male counterpart, the male arm of that organization, I was totally inspired because my work has been totally with men. And now that I'm in this space working with females, I've got a totally different respect and a totally different perspective on how to help men to have a balanced approach to their relationship with the female counterpart. So the work has enriched me, and we're doing a great job. Mr. Bugg is doing an awesome job as a young man, making sure that we dot our I's and cross our T's, and we're researching evidence-based. We pretty much do what works. And along with collaborating with other organizations like yourselves, I love yours, Brother McIntyre, the Rose, what is it? Your organization. What's the name of it again? I was looking at the program.
Save a Rose Foundation.
Save a Rose. I love that. I love that. So looking forward to collaborating with you all as we do at Rose.
And that's a great transition to our last but not least introduction.
Yes, everybody, thank you, thank you. My name is Bruce McIntyre. I am the spouse to the late Amber Rose Isaac, whom passed away due to medical negligence April 20th this year. I started advocating for my fiance immediately the day after, and it gained national attention. So once it gained national attention, I started up the Save a Rose Foundation in honor of Amber. And what we've been doing is we've been combating and dismantling the systemic flaws within the healthcare system, as well as redirecting birth equity. You know, my fiance was cut really short, and she was neglected before COVID even became a thing. She was neglected for months and advocated for herself for months, and she was still being ignored from different doctors, different OBGYNs. And the crazy part about that is her mother had actually worked at the facility that she died at for 25 years. My fiance was 26 years old. they realized that she had HELP syndrome the day of her passing, the day that they decided to induce her labor. They induced her labor by a month and 10 days early, once they kind of caught her syndrome late. Um, Everything about what happened to her screamed negligence from beginning to end. I don't want to get into too much of the specifics, but it's made me a strong advocate, and she also wanted to write a tell-all as well about the experience that she was dealing with, which also gained national attention after she passed away. I've been working very closely with city council members. I was just in a city council meeting for New York. I've been working with legislators. I've been working with everyone from Lauren Underwood's office to Kamala Harris's office. Right now, I'm working with Senator Rivera's office as well. So I've been working with Congress members, legislators, um, city council members, to share my story and to combat. Um, it took a midwife to really explain to us the conditions that my fiance was in, and we switched over to midwifery doula services due to the neglect that we were facing from two different facilities. So, with that being said, with the midwife that actually broke the news to us, um, I actually made her one of my business partners. Amber and I were trying to get midwifery service, but we were unable to due to Amber becoming high risk due to the negligence. We were denied midwifery care, and we were denied entry into a birthing center as well. So stepping into this maternal injustice rights that we're doing now, I've been noticing little things, and the Bronx has the highest C-section rate in New York City. And it's deemed that over 60% of these women don't need C-sections. So I've created the clear indication that they're putting profit over people, and they're securing an extra about $8,000 from a cesarean versus a natural birth. And mind you, over 60% of these women don't need cesareans. We're talking more than half these women. So with the midwife that I've partnered with, we are part of the efforts to bringing the first ever midwifery-led birthing center to the Bronx. And we're waiting for some legislation and stuff to pass. And of course, there are city officials, government officials that don't want this to transpire. Because it's going to take away from the pockets of the um, of the institutionalized hospital, and they don't want to see that poured into the communities. Another thing with Amber and I, Amber had exceptional insurance through the hospital, and we were still going to have to pay about $4,000 out of pocket even after insurance. So not noticing that as well. Not everybody has that luxury of having $4,000 that they can just spend, or a lot of these, especially around the Bronx or New York City, a lot of these families or mothers are on government assisted Medicaid. So my partner and I, Nubia, she created the Amber Rose Isaac Access to Homeburst Scholarship Program. And what that does is it offsets the cost of insurance premiums, and it covers what insurance does not. We've been able to help 16 families thus far with this program, and the majority of the members of the clients that we are getting are on government assisted insurance. So we've been helping families around the Bronx, but my biggest thing right now is trying to change legislation.
I really appreciate all of you for sharing your stories and, letting us know what work you're doing. That last point, and I know I'm going to be a little off script on that, but that last point about legislation and policy is a big, conversation that, like you said, Representative Underwood, Vice President-elect Harris, we have this push for Black maternal health to be a part of legislation and to be a part of policy change. And I think a lot of it is folks not knowing or gaining knowledge and awareness of the fact that there is a push. It's a slow push, to try to extend Medicaid and do some of these things, but a lot of us waiting for those in power, in charge to make changes to save lives has to do with this legislation, and go ahead.
And I hate to cut you off, to be quite honest with you. Speaking to some of these people and speaking to some of the members of these offices, like Cuomo, it's not a priority to Cuomo's office. It's not a priority to his maternal task force. We've reached out plenty of times, and people before myself have reached out plenty of times and have created bills. And it's crazy that we ourselves have to come up with these bills instead of the people who are, who we're paying for with our tax money. Exactly. We're paying for their chair to represent us and to save us and to help us. And that's just not the case at all. We're not being prioritized whatsoever.
Brother McIntyre mentioned cesarean, the C-section in the South is prevalent, especially among minority women, because it has more to do with the doctor's schedule than it has to do with anything else, because natural childbirth happens when it happens. But if this man, say it's around the holidays and he's planning on being in Delaware or New Hampshire somewhere with his family, he's more prone to do a C-section on this minority sister who really doesn't advocate for herself, so that's a great point that you made.
Right, and the other side to that, that's why I tell people why it's so important, especially for Black and brown families, to have a doula or a midwife or an advocate right there, is because a lot of them are coerced into agreeing to C-sections simply out of lack of knowledge of their other options, right? Because a lot of our direct service providers have a way of talking to patients and clients in a way of presenting it as if this is your only option, right? So if you're new to having children, or it's the only thing you've had a couple children and that's the only way you've done it, or the only way your mother's done it, or the only way any other women in your community do it, you have no idea that, as silly as it might sound to some, you have no idea that you can go the route of a natural birth, or you're supposed to have a baby any other type of way, right? And so simply knowing your options and simply making sure that the families I work with know other options, you're doing a huge service to them and potentially saving their lives. And simply empowering them with that knowledge also enables them to advocate for themselves, right? To start asking questions that they typically don't answer, or that the direct service providers don't necessarily want them to answer, and that goes a long way. Because what a lot of our families are facing is, a lot of our direct service providers could say, well, this is what they wanted, this is what they requested, or they didn't ask this, or didn't ask for a different option. Essentially, you're coercing them through a lack of knowledge to do what you want them to do, right? And that's why I say knowledge in itself is a privilege. As a Black man, there are very few times that I can say that I have any type of privilege in this country. But simply working in public health, simply knowing some of the, and being a doula and lactation educator, and knowing the things that I do know in that arena gives me an amount of privilege that a lot of the people in my community don't have. And so I see it as, it's my responsibility to use that privilege to speak up, defend, and advocate for those who don't have the same.
You know, I'd love for you to speak a little bit more about what you just said. What are these type of, well, first of all, tell everybody what a doula is, because we're skipping things like people know what's up. But Mr. Moore, I would love for you to say, what is a doula? What is their role? And what are some of these questions that you're talking about that maybe families and fathers and those that are in the birthing space? Now, granted, it's COVID, so there's different rules about who's where during the time that birth is happening. I'd love
That's
to
another
give
thing that I
those
could
tips.
rail on a while about too.
Oh, right, that's a whole nother conversation. And then I also, in addition to that, Mr. McIntyre, if you want to talk about some of the questions or some of the tips that you have as a new father on how to advocate and speak when you're in that birthing space.
So, so first and foremost, a doula is a childbirth attendant or advocate. Is different from that of a midwife, where a midwife can actually help you deliver the baby, cut the umbilical cord, things of that nature. My job, though, is to, as a doula, is to go over birthing plans and different situations that you may encounter when it's time to deliver, to go over different techniques, give advice, knowledge, education about diet, things like that, while mother is carrying, or the couple is carrying, to make sure that shall be present when we go into prenatal visits, that the right questions are being asked, but then also that our direct service providers are answering, right? Because some of them have a tendency to do that too. Because one of the things too, that a lot of men in particular face, because men get a lot of flack a lot of times about not being involved during the birth process, without people giving context into why that is, such as things like stereotypical gender roles, toxic masculinity, whole 9 yards, right? And so when we have brothers who are actually trying to take an active role in that process and be there are instances where they're in the doctor's office asking questions to the doctor, and the doctors ignore them, right? Doctors talk over them, around them, through them, but never to them, right? They act like the father or the partner does not exist, and the mother is there. What does that do to a father or to a partner who is maybe a little bit uncomfortable to begin with, because he was never raised to believe that it is his right or role to be in this space, even though you're trying to take an active role? What type of subconscious or subliminal messages are you sending him about his worth in that space? And we have to be aware too that it's not just our direct service providers that deliver those messages. Sometimes it's friends and family. Sometimes when a father or a partner is happy that they're about to have a baby and there's about the new addition to the family and they're excited, some of us need to check what we say about saying, "Oh, you ain't doing anything. Your back's not hurting. Your feet ain't swelling. You not having morning sickness." Because you're wrong. It's scientific facts and evidence to prove that men go through biological and physical changes during the birth process, just as women do. They're not all the exact same things, but they also go through these biological and chemical changes during the birth process. So you'd be wrong to assume that he doesn't. And two, what you're doing is, over the course of, like this entire, a period before, baby arrives, you're sending messages that partner is useless to the process, except for helping to create the baby, helping to pay for the baby, and helping to discipline the child. So we expect to send this type of messaging to fathers and condition them for a 9-month period that's all they're worth. But then we get surprised and we get upset and we expect them to do more after the baby's there, as if we weren't sending them coded messages the whole time for dang near a year, that they weren't supposed to be responsible to do anything else. Even though logically speaking, those of us who know about the birth process or know anything about that arena knows that it takes more than, disciplining, paying for, and creating a child to help successfully raise a child to reach all their early childhood milestones. We condition fathers and partners to think that that's all they're worth. But we expect the switch to just flip after the baby's here and to provide more. No, it doesn't work that way. And so it needs to be a collective effort for us to change our manner of thinking about what our space is, because birth work is not women's work. Birth work is family work. Birth work is taking care of the family. That's family work. And I don't know about anybody else. I'm pretty sure I'm going to find agreement with this. But the last I've seen, everybody in a healthy symbiotic family, everybody is all hands on deck when it comes to making sure the family is where they need to be. Right? And so we need to keep those things in mind. But like I said, what we're facing is, we have direct service providers and stuff who don't think around those lines, right? And so my job as a doula to make sure you might not be thinking around those lines, but it's time for that to change. Like, you're going to start thinking that way. Mom and partner are going to know their options. They're going to know what options are on the table, even if it means changing doctors, because that doctor isn't a good option for the family. Because see, a lot of our families don't know that as well, right? I've even heard stories of, I've heard a story of a father who actually missed the birth of his child, not because he wasn't there, not because he wasn't trying to be there, but because he was asking too many questions during the delivery. So he was asked to be, he was removed. And anytime Black men, we raise our voice a couple decibels, doesn't have to be out of anger or anything else, just excitement, because I don't know about y'all, but I'd be pretty excited too if my first child was coming in and I'm trying to figure out what's going on, right? And I'm asking questions. I'm not going to stay at a monotone level or have a low voice. I want to be heard. I want to make sure my baby's okay. I want to make sure my partner's okay. And to be removed for that. And so there's I could keep going on and on and on, and I don't want to do that. But there's a whole litany of things that need to be addressed and fixed that go along with and support Brother Bruce McIntyre's claims about what needs to be changed in our healthcare system to make sure that our mothers and our babies are okay. Because again, when you have 243% of Black women died because of childbirth-related causes, that's not an anomaly. 2.43% is an anomaly. 24.3%, we can start talking about things such as social determinants of health. 243%, I call that medical malpractice.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you say that and that you bring that up, because there was a situation to where Amber and I were getting her, getting things ready because we weren't able to see our doula and go to a birthing center after this. So we had to go see a high risk doctor yet again. And we went to go to the blood lab to draw some blood work for Amber. We got some blood work drawn for her. Everything was smooth. And we're calling and calling and calling, trying to get these updates for this blood work. And we're not getting anything. And then we had to reach out to somebody to have somebody reach out to us. And it seemed like that was just such a normal thing for us to do because we just had to do that so many times. And we ended up getting a call from the doctor, the heads, from the head doctor, I'm sorry. And they were worried about Amber's liver enzymes. So we had to go on the 17th when she made that tweet, her final tweet. We actually had to go to the blood lab yet again, because they wanted to get some more updates. They wanted to get some more blood work. We got there and they had no recollection of us being there the previous week. They couldn't find none of her blood work, her paperwork from the previous week. And we had to get more blood work done, and there was just this whole discrepancy, to where we ended up having to leave and come back later on that day to get blood work drawn. So the very next day they call us in and say that she needs to come in for treatment immediately, So we're scared and we're very upset because we just know how long she's been neglected. And she's high risk and she's scared because she knows nobody's been paying attention to her, especially when telehealth became the thing. We ended up leaving to the hospital, right? And I get to the hospital And, due to COVID, they're not allowing us to, have guests upstairs, or we weren't even able to have a doula or a midwife to be, present in the hospital. The hospital wasn't allowing it. And we had no idea that they were going to induce her labor. So anyways, we get to the hospital, explaining to the receptionist what's going on. And telling them Amber doesn't need to be alone right now. I need to go up with her, or her mother came with us. Her mother needs to go up with her. Her mother works in this facility and has worked there for 25 years, has access to the hospital, and has all of the proper PPE. They still weren't allowing her to come up. So of course we're getting upset because we're telling them, well, you guys have been messing up this whole time, not us. And, my wife is scared for her life, and she doesn't want to be by herself because she's never had to stay in a hospital for a long time, and security comes up to me, right? And she says to me, okay, Mr. Baby Daddy, you need to calm down. We need you to go sit in the lobby. Matter of fact, we don't even want you in the lobby. We need you to leave. So they made me leave and wait in my car. And I just feel like stuff like that is just so normal out here, especially in New York. That's just treatment. We receive the same treatment from two different Montefiore facilities. This is the same branch, just two different facilities. We're getting the same exact treatment. And it's just absolutely ridiculous, the amount of treatment that we're getting, and how much she advocated for herself, and just how much she wasn't heard and she wasn't listened to. They literally didn't find out her condition until the day that she passed. They tried to, to me it seemed like they really wanted it to be COVID, because they tested her for COVID twice, came back negative. They wanted to test her a third time, and the head surgeon had even told Amber, even though you don't have COVID, we're still going to treat you as if you were a COVID patient. And hearing that, you think, okay, well, maybe they're going to wear extra PPE or something, but which is something that they should already be doing for pregnant women. There was just so much wrong, and so much just wrong that's going on. And there is this lack of communication in these hospitals, as well as lack of education, because, thank God that Amber was a smart woman. Because it seemed like the OBGYN or, nobody was really educating her. She's working on getting her master's degree and reading prenatal books at the same time, understanding her body, because they're not educating her on what's going on. And that often these doctors try to blame some of these conditions on the health. Oh, well, they weren't taking care of themselves to begin with. Amber was a pescatarian. She only ate seafood up until she became pregnant. Then she held a strict vegan diet. She was one of the most healthiest people I've ever known in my life. And it doesn't make sense how, she was just so healthy and this happens. Her platelet levels had been deteriorating since December, and they didn't catch it until April. Like it doesn't make no sense at all. And also stepping in, to get away from that, also stepping into birth work, I've been understanding a lot as well, like lactation, like with the donor milk that I've been receiving through doulas, because I have my son on strictly breast milk, or everything that we have is organic. I don't try to give him no Gerber or anything like that. We mash his food up, or we give him, his breast milk. And what a lot of other people didn't know, that I had to teach fathers as well, is you can screen the women that are donating the breast milk. So like, I know a lot of Black mothers that I've spoken to are like, oh, well, if it doesn't come from a Black mama, we don't want it, this and that. And to me, that it didn't really make sense. It just made, to me, I was more or less focused on the just the vitamins and nutrients that the baby should be receiving. So I found donors that held a similar diet to Amber, and that's what I've been giving my son. And a lot of people felt like they didn't know that they had that option as well. And also through birth work as well, I've been able to educate um, the community members, mothers, new parents as well. And from the what I've been collecting from 2019's data, is that in the U.S. between 700 to 900 women are dying from pregnancy related complications. And you know we're maternal mortality rate is higher than any other income country, which is absolutely ridiculous. But yet again, we're paying the most in healthcare, right? And with the lack of education, what a lot of mothers are now starting to understand is what's killing these women, because it's not just them not listening and them just eating whatever and not taking care of their health. It's stuff that's being slipped under the radar that these doctors are just letting, they're just ignoring, and then it snowballs and becomes this bigger thing. So what we know that is killing mothers is like cardiovascular disease, hemorrhaging, high blood pressure causing seizures or strokes, blood clots, infections, preeclampsia, and I added HELP syndrome as well because that's what Amber had. And HELP syndrome is a serious high blood pressure during pregnancy, and that's hemolysis, um, elevated liver enzymes, low platelet counts, and that's what HELP syndrome is. And some of these leading causes are to maternal mortality. So that means for every 100 women suffer from severe complications related to pregnancy, childbirth. That results in over 60,000 women per year developing one of these conditions. And, maternal mortality has been on the rise in the US, and it's estimated that 1.5 to 2%, I believe, of the 4 million deliveries that occur every year in this country are associated with one of these events. So that's 5 to 6 women every hour having a blood clot, a seizure, a stroke, receiving blood transfusion, or having, a high-end organ damage as well, such as kidney failure. So that's like the main causes that are killing some of these women. And it's crazy that I have to, in the span of, on the 20th will make 8 months. In the span of 8 months, I've had to become a birth worker, a doctor, a community rights activist, a maternal rights activist, a political activist, and it's just it's crazy to me how we don't have people in gear and in place and ready for people in my situation, and they lack rehabilitation. They were trying to, for antidepressants and stuff, they were trying to give me like Xanax. And I feel like that plays like a big role on our communities, because whenever we're facing depression, they throw Xanax at us, and I'm telling them, well, how am I supposed to take care of my child if I'm doped up on drugs? And that's just such a repetitive cycle that they've been doing to our Black communities to destroy us.
I'm so glad that you mentioned everything that you mentioned in your remarks. And I wanna tie a couple things together that you just said that Mr. Moore had said earlier, which is about 4 of the 5 leading causes of maternal death are related to high blood pressure. So, the medical community uses that communication to make it seem like it's this biological thing, not taking into account the impact of stress. And that stress is such is what leads to why so many Black folks, the mom and the dad, have hypertension before, during, and after the baby comes. And so when you talk about preeclampsia and HELP syndrome and a variety of other conditions and risk factors for death, we're not taking into account that before 20 weeks, if this mom and the family is treated a certain type of way, if in their community there's pollution that's impacting asthma, that's impacting their blood pressure, that if there's stress, if there is stress, right? And COVID is a stress, right? Killing Black people in the street, the police killing Black men in the street is a stress. Going to school and being told you're not going to be nothing, pipeline to prison, that is a stress. And then you want to tie it around and say, well, actually, this is a high risk birth.
Well, there in itself, you figured out the big hustle now. Now we're talking about the big hustle, because the big hustle is composed of two different things. What I tell people. So there's two different things. In America, we do a great job of sending children, people, whoever, out in the community, underprepared or ill, and then getting mad at them or punishing them when they don't meet the mark or they don't succeed. The other part of the hustle is when you traumatize an individual or a person or a community so much, after a while, you no longer have to traumatize them. They'll traumatize themselves and not even know it. And this is what I mean by that. It's not saying people go out and do things horribly or whatever, or something or anything like that. But what we talked about, people not being able to eat well, stressors, things like that. All of those things in the public health world are what we talk about social determinants of health. Like, how can you worry about working out if you're worried about keeping a roof over your head? How can you worry about getting good rest if the roof over your head is filled with mold or anything like that? How can you eat well when there's only one supermarket in your neighborhood that might be 2 miles, a 2-mile walk, and then everything else is fast food? You don't see that in the nicer neighborhoods. You don't see that in predominantly white communities. It's different things like that. We ignore facts of things, the science like epigenetics, which says trauma can be passed down at the cellular level, right? So you want to traumatize us, damage us, and have that stuff be passed down from generation to generation and set us behind the mark, but then get mad at us for not being able to overcome a mountain that was placed in front of us before we were even there. Like how was it supposed to work? How are we supposed to do that? It's simply not possible. But again, we like to pretend like those things don't exist, and we like to carry on this myth or whatnot that, African Americans or Black folks need to, pick themselves up by the bootstraps and this, that, and the other. You want us to pick ourselves up by the bootstraps when we built the country. Your ancestors didn't pick themselves up by the bootstraps, so why we got to do it? And so, like I said, it's the great hustle, right? It's to put out this narrative and stuff like that to get ahead of life, you got to do for yourself. You got to do better. You got to make better choices, make better decisions. But if the only choices and decisions or opportunities I leave you are the worst of the worst, am I really setting you up for success? If like Brother McIntyre is saying, like, you're jumping through all the hoops, seeing doctors, going to appointments, they're losing documentation, they're losing blood work, they're losing stuff like that, then how can you blame them for having a high blood pressure or a disorder or a disease when the family has done their half of their share of the work of making sure, to mitigate what's going on?
I wanted to bring in the conversation about the postpartum period as well. And I know Mr. Root and Mr. Bugg, working in lactation support and community work, also, your work brings in everything we talked about, but once the family has had the child or is in, when the infant is small. And so do you all want to talk a little bit about tying in together the experience of fathers, new fathers especially, in that early period, and how advocacy, how they can advocate for themselves, how type of organizations like yours that allow fathers to be more involved when breastfeeding, may be something that it feels like is not a conversation, or it feels like it's not something that they can participate in. I mean, Mr. McIntyre just shared, his experience with donor milk and finding out other options. So I'd love for you all to talk a little bit more about your work and how you've seen your impact in young and new fathers.
Well, we've had the opportunity to work with AmeriGroup. AmeriGroup offers breastfeeding training to the men of their clients, and we have been working with them for the past. I know I worked with them all of this year. Wesley has been working with them before then, but we actually go in and physically teach before COVID breastfeeding classes to the men, using research and evidence-based curriculum. Everything is research and evidence-based. As a matter of fact, under the leadership of AmeriGroup's registered nurse practitioner that actually leads the effort. But it's been enlightening because we get an opportunity to share with men and to break a lot of the myths that are associated with breastfeeding, because young men, especially young fathers, they really don't know much about the process because for the most part, they had been under the influence of toxic masculinity as well, but didn't know it. It's all in our media. It's in all of the systems in society. Like we were just talking about, the medical apparatus not responding to the needs of the most vulnerable the way that they really need to. The young men are not really being taught. So we have a space there where we're able to do breastfeeding education, literally just basic stuff like simple things you can do after the child is born, like making sure that the mother is able to eat, bring food to her, bring water to her, be at her side, make sure that she's getting rest. Basic things. We really go in using a curriculum. And it really helps the fathers because most of the young fathers, they had no idea that breasts were for breastfeeding. A lot of them thought breasts were for them and their sexual pleasure. And the light comes on, they begin to learn some things, and learning about oxytocin, this calming substance for the woman that creates a bond between her and her child. And for them to know that a man has to be, for a woman, is almost innate. It is innate that they have a natural bond. The mother and the baby have a natural bond. But for a father, he has to be intentional about his being with the baby, spending time with the baby. He has to make time for that. Mr. McIntyre can tell you that he has to be very purposeful about the time that he's going to spend with his baby. Whereas for the mother, it's innate. She's going to breastfeed. Okay, she's got to spend time with the baby. But the man doesn't necessarily have to do that. He doesn't necessarily have to be there. And a lot of times that's why the narrative is so bad on the Black father, because they feel like we're just not involved because we may not be involved at certain periods of time. But that's something that we've had an opportunity to do. We work with young fathers and young mothers as well, because a lot of them don't know. They also learn a lot of different points from the breastfeeding classes. And that's just part of the work that we do. But Wesley has some ideas on some other things that we do as well.
Yep. Just wanted to say, continue to collaborate, work together. As we've identified, there's a huge barrier or hurdle in front of us that we can't get through. We just have to get through it together. So we discussed policy. I'm not sure if I said it in the introduction, but I am an attorney from Florida bar, taking the Georgia bar now, looking for results coming soon. And through that work, I'm working with policy legislators and other individuals who are looking to make an impact. But we know local changes and national changes take different amount of time. So there are organizations, there are individuals who are working to make a change in their communities, just like we are on this call. And there are also national organizations who are looking to make change that I would make sure that we're all aware of. Some of them are the United States Breastfeeding Committee, USBC. That's one of the big ones that I'll mention, because that's similar to other countries who have health ministers. We don't have a health minister here in the United States. We have surgeon generals and things like that, but we don't have the priority of health that other countries have. And USBC does try a very good job to try to speak for a national population and not just for one or two interested parties. But we have to keep amplifying our voices. So there's an initiative called Baby Friendly that are being used to change the way hospitals interact with moms, dads, service providers, and others, and other groups like that, that we have to make sure that we're highlighting and making sure that we're a part of, because we're all doing great work. And just, stay motivated. And I see we have a new panelist. I want to make sure he gets time to say hello.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. And yes, I will let our final panelist introduce herself. And I will apologize publicly to everybody. I forgot to clarify the time zones, because we are all in different time zones. I'm in Pacific. Some of you all are in Eastern. And our brother Jay Whitlow is in Central, and I forgot. So
Okay.
please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about the work that you do with Black Millennials for Flint, the work that you do when it comes to fathers and the environmental justice movement, and about your experience as a young dad.
So again, thank you for having me. I'm Jay Whitlow. I'm the creative director for Privilege. I have a management consulting company, and our goal is to really, we influence culture, we help evolve it philanthropically, philanthropy, and through economic and socially. So I got, hear my son in the background. I'm sorry.
Nice touch.
busy. It's real over here. Come on, son. But what we do is, I'm so distracted. I'm like, no perfect timing. And so kind of like through the work of Privilege, I've got into the industry really creating social experiences around we work, we give, we party. Here recently, we just decided to evolve more into a management consulting firm, because we just had so many opportunities to really work with organizations and help them create social experiences. I found a niche there. I like to say I'm a college party promoter, and that was where I found my gift there. But I actually got involved in organizations like the NAACP, Urban League, and realized it was, not knocking anybody, but they just miss a taste of cool a little bit. And so I feel like we brought some cool to the table, something from the just something organic and fresh to the table. So we launched Privilege with that concept in mind. 2 years ago, I reached out, worked with Tracy, and I had an opportunity to get on the Black Millennials for Flint, their ambassadors. And that's really kind of where my work in lead prevention really came from. I got a chance to learn a lot from the group, and being a part of the program. I had an opportunity to write a blog around June, about Black fatherhood and us actually dealing with lead prevention. And that just really, when you work on something specifically, you kind of learn a lot through the process, and just realizing I felt like environmental justice was just another thing that us Black men had to deal with when it came to raising our children and the side effects that it potentially has on our young Black boys. And so that really encouraged me to be an advocate for all things environmental justice, because it's just like everything else. I mean, it coincides with the rest of the movement of us just pushing Black culture forward, pushing Black women forward, pushing Black men forward. Like it's a line that's integrated in the process, and you can't move culture forward on any aspect if you're not talking environmental justice as well. So yeah, not to ramble, but yeah, that's my thing. I had a son a year ago, first kid. I'm 35, and I am just excited about the responsibility of raising another young Black man to be better than I am, because I like to think I'm pretty great. So, so I definitely am interested in figuring that piece out and just giving the world, giving the world something, the best thing that I have to offer, which is my son, and the things that I teach him. So, yeah.
Well,
I'm here.
you came in at the perfect time because we are gonna get ready to wrap up because we're at the hour, and so I'll let you kind of start. I want to do almost like a call to action, and with Black Millennials for Flint, we kind of have a tradition where when we're wrapping up, each of our panelists can talk about something in their community or an issue that is important to shine light on, and also share with the viewers how they can find out more information about that particular topic or issue, how they can get involved, whether it be in person or now, virtually. So if there's a social media to plug or an event, a virtual event coming up. But I do want to start with you around if there is anything that as it pertains to the environmental justice movement, as it pertains to the other work that you do in Memphis around fatherhood and families that you want to plug, that you want to share, that you want to shed light on, or any just tips, any advice, any wisdom that you want to share with other brand new fathers, in your case, brand new fathers, around the topics that you're most interested and passionate about.
So I don't necessarily have any particular projects that I'm working on. I'm in operations, but one thing I try to encourage people in leadership, when we have an opportunity to run something in an organization and we have an opportunity to employ people, we need to do our due diligence in making sure that we are employing Black men that have children at legitimate wages, and that we're willing to take on the training, the responsibility of training and moving young Black people from good to great. And that's regardless if it's a McDonald's job or a warehouse job. It's from moving how to do forklift to inventory in the warehouse. How do we get these individuals to be to the next level? And so I pride myself in my contribution on a day-to-day basis. That's not, you can't go around taking pictures. I don't want my company to know all he doing is bringing in Black folks every chance he get. But that's right, because that's all I'm doing. But I'll be silent about it. I can speak voices here, but it doesn't belong on social media. But I tell us, like, we can be silent but deadly. And I encourage us, we don't have to talk about everything we're doing. We don't have to show everybody. We don't have to do it for the likes or do it for the gram to get it done. But we need to make sure that one of the root things we talk about all the time is poverty. And we talk about this wealth gap that we have. So yes, we may have employed these young people at $17 an hour full-time, 5% annual bonus, 5%, 3% annual raise, which is what, $35,000? It's not a lot of money. But one thing we did do with them is we talked to them about their finances. I've given all those people that work for me a little budget sheet on how I break my money down, because, Dave Ramsey seems to be for the rich folks, but there's some method to the madness, and specifically how you spend your money from, you take your $1,000 paycheck down to $0. And it doesn't matter how much money you spend. Like, we have to teach people how to be financially free in whatever situation they're in. And so, not to ramble on, but my charge is that we don't have to wait for systems and politics and for votes and for presidents and people to be in office to stand up and do something and be proud to be Black. Like, we don't have to wait for someone to applaud us on our back. There are opportunities every day that allow us to move the needle from good to great. You got to do it because you want to do it, and you got to want to do it for the culture, and not do it because you want somebody to like your page or invite your ass to come and sit and talk on a panel for an hour to people. You just got to be about the action. So my call to action is, time waits for no one. And as I name my company Privilege, it is time for us to exercise our rights to be privileged. So that's my thing.
Thank you. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next. So definitely wanted to echo the theme of party with a purpose, or being comfortable where you are. I think, depending on the culture, depending on the population, that matters. So the job that you have should in some way impact others in a positive way. And just understanding that not everyone has to be in the same situation you're in to empathize or understand how someone else could be in a problematic situation. So there are service providers out there for every situation. Not everyone has to be able to tackle every problem. So that's something we see too, that every male-based organization might not be able to help every man with every issue, but there should be a network like we're creating here on this platform to help every man with every issue. So keep collaborating, keep being motivated, keep making yourself better, keep looking out for family and friends, but also just understand you have to take care of yourself. So self-care is important, but there can be a comfortable way to move forward, but we can't ignore our past, which has also been mentioned several times, and understand that not everybody gets the same playing board or is in the same position or can make the same movements. So just being aware of that, but working together and being positive.
Live a purpose-filled life. I think that men need to be more purposeful about confronting the powers that be and holding them accountable to the offices and the spaces where they reside. We have people sitting in too many offices for too long, doing the same old thing. And what we hear, especially black men in my circle, say, they ain't letting us do this, or they won't let us. No. It's not they. There's a name and a position associated, whatever your issue is. It's your responsibility to find out the name of the person holding the position that can impact your situation. I think that men have got to be dutiful about making sure that they hold people accountable. And for the most part, we have not done that. You know, a lot of men, for a lot of guys in my circle, didn't even vote for a long time because they said they ain't gonna, man, they gonna put who they want to put in there. Well, who is they? And then, you know, we have to be willing to have that fearless dialogue with our friends and family and loved ones to correct stinking thinking, because that stinking thinking keeps us stuck in the past. We got to move forward and we got to be more progressive. Thank goodness for technology. It's upgraded us all a little bit. We're a little bit more in the know now. Guess what? COVID-19 exposed America for who she truly is. And social media has exposed America for who she truly is as well. So I think we need to take advantage and leverage these platforms so that we can confront the powers that be and correct some of these old ways of thinking. I'll leave it with that.
I think for me, it's just to go by my motto and my affirmation. I say to myself every day, so what? Do all things with audacity and vision. Divine beings will do divine acts. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is have the courage to follow your own vision. A lot of people say that they do their own thing, but in the back of their mind, they're worried about how somebody else will perceive it. Realize that your vision is your vision, and everybody's not going to be able to see that. Just because they don't see it doesn't mean that you need to stop it, because human beings have the distinct characteristic of wanting to limit others based on our own limitations. So if I don't feel I can do it, then you must not be able to do it. If it's not possible for me, then it's not possible for you. That's not accurate at all. Have the audacity to follow your vision, see it through, do great things. And then also, let's support one another. Let's support everybody that looks like us just as much as we support people that don't look like us. Because, you know, a lot of us, I like to say, support Black business, support Black people, support this, support that. But as soon as one of our brothers or sisters slip up, first thing we say is, that's why I don't buy from Black people. That's why I don't go to this Black organization. That's why I don't do this, I don't do that. But if Nike mess up your order, you still give them the next $200 you get for another pair of Jordans that come out the following month, right? If Target sells you a broken vacuum, all you do is return it and buy something else from Target. I know people who can't go to Target and leave that place without spending $95 every time, right? So instead of putting other people's children through college and having to take out loans for our own, why don't we start recycling our money and supporting people who live in our community that look like us? So we no longer have to take out loans for our own, and we can educate our own and put our own through. So support those that look like you just as much as you support those that don't look like you. Have the audacity to see out your own vision. That's all I really got for everybody.
And my call to action would be turning pain into purpose, which is something that I've had to do this year. After people face such, traumatic events in their life, they usually sink into depression and they sink into this dark hole. And I feel like people have to find purpose through that and not let that, eat you alive. Everything that I'm doing with the foundation is for the love of my fiance, because these are, I'm a man advocating for maternal rights, so everything that I'm doing in my foundation these are things that she envisioned, her being an early life educator. She received her bachelor's in psychology. She wanted to introduce art therapy to the youth of the communities. That's something that I'm implementing within the foundation. Art therapy for the communities as a way of the youth to express themselves artistically. She also was getting her master's degree for business development. She didn't like the way that the early childhood program that she was working for, she didn't like how they were treating their children. She felt like they were putting profit over children. And she wanted to create her own childhood program for herself. So, to tailor the needs for underprivileged families. So these are things that I've been able to implement within the foundation. And, people are asking me every single day, how do you find the strength to do this? And I tell them, this is not my strength. This is Amber's strength. If this would have happened to me last year, I wouldn't be able to handle this, but Amber gave me strength. She was one of the people that actually helped me fight against depression and anxiety. She helped me with that. And I feel like there's no better honor that I could do but to represent her every single day. And people ask me, oh, well, how are you doing this? Because I jumped into advocating immediately. I didn't really give myself time to grieve. Because I felt like I could hear Amber talking to me, telling me not to fall into depression, telling me to get up and fight every single day, and really just sit down and find your purpose in life and just tunnel that in, and make that come into fruition.
Turning pain into purpose. That I can think of a better way to wrap up today. So I want to thank everyone so much for your time, for sharing your work and your experiences. We're going to make sure that when we post, when we add the details to the video, that everyone is able to get in contact with you all based on your social media and your website. So if there's any additional contact information, you can get that to me and I can get that out. And last but not least, I see that Wesley wanted me to make sure Mr. Root wanted me to make sure that everybody stays tuned for the 2021 Reaching Our Brothers Everywhere Summit. So we'll make sure we get that information out. But thanks again for tuning in. Once again, I'm Vanessa Vassall, maternal and child health epidemiologist and full spectrum doula, representing Black millennials for Flint. And I am so grateful for all of you gentlemen for coming tonight and sharing with us and with the community your stories. Please drop your social media in the chat, then I'll post it online. And for everyone else online, thank you so much. And we'll see you at the next event.